Welcome to the Zoe Routh Leadership Podcast, where we explore the future and what this means for your leadership. We ask the big questions. What's happening on the horizon? What does this mean for us? And most importantly, what skills do I need now for leadership of the future? It's time to explore. Let's go.
Hey there, it's Zoe. Welcome to the show. And I have a question for you. How much impact do you want to make? Now, of course, you're rolling your eyes, going, of course I want to make an impact, duh. Well, let me tell you about my guest today. Her name is Carolyn Butler-Madden. She is a marketing expert of some 30 years plus experience who went from marketing the big brands around the world to converting that to being a purpose consultant. She has come up with a business strategy, which is all about crafting your business purpose so that it has a deep social impact that is meaningful for you and your customers, so that you make money as well as make a contribution. Her latest book is called For Love and Money, and I loved it. It was really well written, has some excellent case studies, and was incredibly inspiring, uplifting, and motivating. So For Love and Money is her book. And in our conversation today, we talk about what the heck is business purpose anyway. It's not just something that you tag up on the wall. It becomes embedded into the DNA of your business. And you recruit people to a cause that is worthwhile, and you use your business as a vehicle to enact that cause. Very exciting stuff. So without further ado, here is Carolyn. Well, all the way from Sydney, welcome to the show, Carolyn Butler-Madden.
Thank you, Zoe. I'm really pleased to be here.
You are from Sydney, right? I just need to double check that.
Yes, Sydney.
Okay, I thought I read that in your bio and wanted to double check. And it just feels like a hop, skip, and a jump away, me being in Canberra. And apart from being geographically close, we're also very close in our passion for business. What I'm curious about, though, is how did you get into this line of work? How did you become a business purpose consultant? And you'll also have to answer, what is a business purpose consultant at the same time?
Okay, maybe I should answer that first, should I?
Go for it.
So a business purpose consultant works with businesses to help them uncover their purpose and to embed it meaningfully into their organisation. And that means embedding it into the strategy of their organisation so that you can actually extract the full benefits of being a purposeful organisation, not just the social impact, but also the profitability.
Okay.
So that's what a business consultant does, or a purpose consultant does. That's what I do anyway. So I'm late in my career, right? I'll be 60 this year.
Oh my God.
Which I can't believe. I'm a late developer, right? But I started my career in marketing in London, and that was actually an accidental career. So I was young, just wanted to get money to go travelling, had come back from a travelling stint and landed in an agency. I thought I'd be there for 3 months before I went off travelling again. And I was lucky enough to work in London in the 80s and find a beautiful company who just, it was a bunch of young people, and they just allowed us to raise ourselves and soar, right? Incredible culture, and I've carried that with me through my whole career. But it was an accidental career, landed in client service, and through that opportunity, I got to develop skills in strategy, creativity, delivering results. And those skills are foundational in what I do today. All of them, I use all of them. And we worked for big corporate clients. When I moved back to Australia, same again. I started in a small agency. I ended up becoming a co-owner of that agency and then owning it outright. And working for big brands. And Zoe, I loved using those skills. I loved what I did. But after a time, I started feeling a bit jaded about what I was doing it for. And who I was doing, not who I was doing it for. I worked with great clients, but that question of, do you really want to just, sell more Pepsi or Cadbury or electronic goods, Panasonic, Microsoft, these were all the big brands, and it was just about selling more of that stuff. And I guess for me, having grown up with quite a strong social conscience, there was a disconnect. And all the way back in 2010, we were doing a pitch for a client, and I had an incredible planner who did some work around what was then cause marketing. And she showed me what was happening back in 2009-10, I think it was. And it blew my mind to see what was happening, particularly in the US, strategically. And that's where I suddenly thought, this is where I could, tap into not just the skills I love doing, but to create impact. So to create meaningful value out of those skills. And from there, it was just a journey of a bit of a slow journey. I went to a conference in Chicago in 2012, which completely blew my mind with the opportunities. I came back a raving evangelist thinking, everybody's going to jump on board because this is just a no-brainer. And, this was 2012 in Australia. And I was talking about social purpose. Nobody knew what I was talking about. Do you know, I found something really interesting during that time, and that was I was going around presenting to marketing departments, and people would just, when they saw the possibilities, the energy shift in the room would be absolutely palpable. And I feel like those people, they'd all file in the beginning of the presentation looking grumpy about having to sit through another presentation. But that energy shift, when they realised, oh my God, what we do could have incredible, meaningful value in the world. It's just, I talk about it a lot as I think it's a human truth. I think most people actually want to use their time to do something that has true value. And when they see they can do it, they lean into it.
So I wanted to pick up on something that might be rattling around people's heads as they think about this, because you talked about, cause marketing. And the images that come up for me is like, oh yeah, let's hitch our business cart to a cause so that we look good in promoting that cause. And so we have the halo effect of supporting a good cause. And the capitalist side of the business gets reinforced and benefits from supporting this charity-based or purpose-based organization or cause. And so it becomes a means to an end as opposed to an end in itself. So what you're talking about, though, is beyond that, beyond the capitalist. If we just, fly our flag next to the social agenda, then we'll reap the financial benefit from that. It's both. And I think the title of your book your latest book is called For Love and Money. It's not one or the other, and it's not one in service of the other. It's both. And I think that's an important distinction to make. So coming back to the epiphany and the people's energy shifting, I'm projecting now that when you talk about how you run a social purpose business or a business that is both profitable and purposeful, that people go, wow, I can make money. There's nothing dirty about that. And I can do good. And that is a compelling, uplifting message as opposed to, because one feels that it's either one or the other. And that's sort of what led to your own move away from big corporate, was like, I don't want to just make money. I want to make a difference.
That's 100% right. That's 100% right. And this idea of you've got to choose between profit and purpose, it's not a binary choice. And in fact, I've seen some recent Australian research which shows that people, employees and customers, consumers, are not buying that anymore. They're saying, it's not about one or the other. It's not about, well, if you want to be purposeful, then we'll have to pay you less and this sort of stuff. It is intrinsically interlinked, the two, with each other. And in fact, I interviewed the CEO of Unilever Australia, who are a purpose-led organisation globally and locally, and they're in fact, Unilever Australia is in fact the first corporate B Corp in Australia, and B Corp is the highest ethical certification in the world. And Nikki Sparshott, she says, I think the idea of purpose and profit being a binary choice is simply lazy.
I love that. It's just lazy. And I think the word not-for-profit also has a lot to answer for as well, having worked in charities for 30 years. And I think it works on your psyche in a negative way. We're a not-for-profit, which means we're not here to make money. And so you end up on struggle town because you're not making money and you're trying to compete in a world which expects charities to operate as businesses. And so you lose out with that either lazy choice. And I think it's healthy for charities to revamp that. And I think, as you're suggesting, it's very healthy for businesses to revamp that. So let's dig into this a little bit. What is a purpose in a business? You talked about helping businesses uncover their purpose as if it's hiding under a rock somewhere. So what does it mean for a for-profit commercial business to discover their social purpose?
Discovering, it really is about uncovering their purpose. And I'm a big believer. I know there are, some of the bigger companies who'll go and brief an agency or whatever and say, come up with a purpose statement. You just can't do that. You cannot outsource it because purpose, you joked about it hiding under a rock. But the seeds of purpose are hiding under a rock within your organization. No matter what size the organization, I guarantee it is, the foundations, the seeds, the origins are already there. So it's about peeling away the layers to reveal it, to uncover it, and then to articulate it with such clarity and in such a compelling way to engage people in that higher purpose, so they start thinking differently about how they do business, how they show up in work, and so forth. But being a purpose-led organization is not just about finding your why. I think that's one of the most limiting beliefs that are out there. And I say that, and I know some people will probably think, oh, but Simon Sinek. And I'm not bashing Simon Sinek. I loved what he did with Start With Why. But that was back in 2008-9, right? And Simon Sinek has moved on since then. Starting with why is about starting with why, but you don't stop there, and too many companies have stopped there. He talks in his later book, The Infinite Game, about a great cause that you stand for. Now, this isn't about cause marketing again, but this is about how you show up to contribute to society. That's what higher purpose is about. It's not about, well, we're in business to make money and then we give back. Again, that's another misconception. People thinking that giving back time and money makes them a purpose-led business. And the clue is in the words. Purpose and being purpose-led is not about, so let me put it this way. Most businesses are led by a purpose. Everyone has a purpose, and most businesses are led by a purpose, and the purpose is to be as profitable as possible. And then they start thinking about, once I'm profitable, then I can give back. But it's about shifting your thinking to what's beyond that. What is a vision, a belief, or a vision of the future that's actually going to drive us forward, and what is our role in that? What do we care about? And so much of it, Zoe, is wrapped up in identity, the unique organizational identity of a business and the shared narrative that runs through a business. And many people might think, they might scratch their heads at that thought. But when you employ people, you're rarely employing people just for their skills. You usually employ people, you've got to check that box on skills. But if you've got two people and they've got equal skills, why are you choosing one over the other? It's usually because there is an alignment of values or an overall shared narrative. And that's what we tap into, because if you can tap into that and understand that and clarify it, that's when you can start thinking about, well, what does that mean? What does that mean in terms of how we show up as a business? What is important to us? And then you start thinking, what is the legacy? What is the impact we want to have in the world? And what do we want to be known for? And how are we going to achieve it?
Hey, it's Zoe. If you're enjoying these leadership insights, join us in the Amplifiers Academy. It's bite-sized leadership development through self-paced videos and exercises, templates, checklists, resources, and an online community to connect with other leaders. It's Amplifiers Academy, your gateway to better, stronger leadership. See you there. So you mentioned Unilever as a B Corp here in Australia, Unilever Australia being a B Corp. How does their purpose show up in terms of what they actually do?
I'm so glad you asked that question because I just find them a fascinating case study, and they've really led in this area. Their purpose is, wait for it, to make sustainable living commonplace. Now, I want you to think about that for a moment and think about the brands and products that Unilever sell. You know, they're one of the biggest consumer product companies in the world. They're a giant, and they produce so much plastic through their business, and yet their purpose is to make sustainable living commonplace. Now, it would be understandable for people to go, yeah, right, and feel cynical about it. But if you actually do your research on Unilever, they have been on this journey for coming up to 13 years. They had an incredibly visionary CEO who started in 2010, and he set the tone, Paul Polman. And to give you an example of how he set the tone, on his first day in the job, he publicly came out and announced, he said, Unilever will no longer be taking a short-term value position in the marketplace. We are looking at long-term value creation. What that means is we're not going to issue quarterly guidance earnings, and respectfully, I'll tell our investors, if you don't like that, then I suggest you take your money elsewhere. Now, this was the first day of his job, and it was the first CEO role he had.
Pretty risky.
Risky, ballsy, courageous, and he continued. And, you know, under his leadership, they have completely, looked at how they can start changing the way they do things in order to become more sustainable, how they can build a portfolio of purpose-led brands to not just for what they do, but to create a movement of change through their influence and through their stakeholders, how they work with suppliers. It is a massive undertaking, and there are stories. He's written a book called Net Positive, and it's a really incredible book. He's no longer CEO. He was there for 10 years. He oversaw the strategy, and it was very successful, and he handed over to a new CEO. But they worked with governments in countries all over the world in partnership to create impact, through their technologies, through their products. And, this is an example of a corporate, okay? There are so many examples of startups who I heard it described as, by one founder of a startup, as a Mission 2.0 business. So these are businesses that are actually starting with the question of impact. How do we create this impact? What business should we create that is going to be able to create this, be best placed to create this impact? And these businesses are starting and getting incredible investor funding as well. So just to give your listeners one example of these is ZeroCo. So ZeroCo is in Unilever's space, right? So they sell household products and personal care products, and their purpose is to untrash the planet. So
I love that as a purpose statement, untrash the planet.
Yep, absolutely. And they want to remove single-use plastic. So they went right into the heart of it, right? Household products, personal care products, that is one of the categories that's creating this problem. And consumers are creating this problem. And so, they created a model where they produced what they call forever bottles that they send out to their consumers who buy. and their Forever bottles is made from recyclable ocean plastic. And then they send refill pouches. And, you get your pack, you buy it online, you get your pack, you put your product from your refill pouches into the Forever bottle. They give you a big envelope. You put your pouch packaging into the envelope, and once you've got enough pouch packages, you send it back to them, and they recycle that. So ZeroCo, when they launched, I think it was 2019, they broke the record for crowdfunding, and they broke it in hours, right? I think the record was, from memory, $3 million, and I think it had taken 3 weeks or something like that. They got to $3 million in 6 hours. They broke the internet in the process. They've since had funding from investors like, Atlassian founders, some very, very high-profile Australian investors, and they've built a successful business, and they're now available in some, I think they might be available in some Woolworths stores, or they're available in some national supermarkets. So, that's an example of a startup. So you've got corporate, you've got startups, but you've got smaller and medium-sized businesses who I believe are best placed to lead the charge on purpose, because they are of a size that makes them more agile, and they can start to see the impact much more quickly than a big corporate might be able to.
And so this sounds counterintuitive to me, Carolyn, because often when we talk about these big social impact initiatives, it is for the likes of Unilever's, which are global companies. And I think a lot of leaders who are in small to medium enterprises be like, well, that's good for them. They've got the resources to do that. We're just a little guy and in a big pond. So let's talk about that. Your idea that small to medium enterprises are best placed to make the biggest impact because they can be more agile. Give us an example. Give us a story of a small organization that has embraced social impact purpose and embedded it in their whole way of being.
I do have small examples I can share with you, but what I'd like to share is an example of a larger, medium-sized organisation. Are you familiar with Bloom's the Chemist?
I can look it up. So a chemist, yeah?
Yeah, so they're a pharmacy retailer, and they do have a national footprint. They have about 100 stores around the country. And, so they're a decent-sized business, not so large that they're in the corporate sphere, but large enough where their impact will make a significant difference, and small enough to be open to change and agile enough to change. So we started working with Bloom's the Chemist a few years ago, and when they came to us, they're very much a community pharmacy, and they had a vision to become the biggest and best community pharmacy group in Australia. That was their vision, okay? And when we first undertook this journey, I think during the journey, and purpose is very much a journey. It's not something you tick a box and get done. It is an ongoing journey where you keep leveling up. And I think when they started it, possibly their idea of what they were starting was quite different to what it turned out to be. I think like most people, they thought we need a purpose statement, we need to understand our why and connect it to our giving back. And that's that. So I worked with them on what is called our Path to Purpose program. And we work through 6 pillars to embed purpose deeply into an organisation. So it starts with your brand, because a brand today is not just about how you show up in the marketplace to customers. A brand today for any sized organisation is just as relevant to your own people, as well as investors, and of course, customers. So purpose has to exist at the very heart of your brand. It can't just be let's add a why statement here. It's got to exist in the centre of your brand. And then we look at how do we then give ownership to a company's people. How do we embed it into the culture? And that's our people and culture pillar, number 2. The third pillar is partners in purpose. So it looks at now that we understand, what our higher purpose is and what our mission is within that, who are we going to partner and collaborate with to scale that impact? Not just impact partners. Impact partners are really important, but it may be that you also have other partners who are about amplifying your message or bringing other skills in. And I'll put some more specifics into the example in a moment. Then we look at customer experience, how you integrate it into the customer experience so that your customers don't just know about your purpose, but can get involved in it as well. And then, did I mention marketing?
No.
And communications? I think I missed that one. It's marketing and communications, then customer experience. And finally, impact and performance. What are your goals? What are your high-level goals, long-term? What are your medium goals and targets? And those goals shouldn't just be about the impact that you're there to create, but your business success, because as I said before, they are intrinsically interlinked. So you need to make that case to continue to bring all your stakeholders on the journey with you. So does that make sense?
Yep, it does.
So Bloom's a chemist. So when we first started working with them a few years ago, vision to become the biggest and best in Australia, community pharmacy in Australia, they had some wonderful partnerships already. Like, they're a beautiful organisation, right? Amazing people, very much a people kind of company. And they were working with organisations like Make-A-Wish, Gidget Foundation, Butterfly Foundation. Their partner conferences, and their partners are their pharmacists who are partners in the business. They'd go to Africa where they'd help people in villages aligned with some of their sponsorships. So they worked hard to bring their people on their journey, to really putting community service at the core of who they are. So when we uncovered their purpose, well, this is their purpose statement, right? So I'll start here. It's to help build a future where everyone, everywhere, has access to good health and well-being.
I love it. That's great.
Now, that aligns with pharmacy, what they're doing in community, but it's bigger than what they were already doing, okay? And what that does, it changes the lens that drives their strategy. So, we now have a one-page strategy page which encapsulates their purpose, their vision, their values, their strategy pillars, and then around all of that, their full supply chain from research to product to manufacturing to, sales, marketing, all the different parts of the value chain in service of their purpose and strategy. All right, so I want to share with you some of the goals that they have set. This has now been signed off by the board. So bear in mind, when I started working with them, it was through COVID. And so what should be a 6-month process took longer than 6 months. Plus, the person within the organisation driving it went off on maternity leave, and she was amazing. She went off, had twins, came back, picked it up straight away, and made sure it was prioritised. And the board have signed off the strategy and through the process bringing her leadership team on the way, the partners, the pharmacy partners on the way, and the board. But let me give you some examples. I'm not going to give everything away because, a lot of this is in the bag for them to start building out over a period of time. So to help build a future where everyone everywhere has access to good health and well-being, they've got 3 pillars: people, community, and environment and governance. They start with their own people. So one of their high-level goals is to improve the health and well-being of their own team members and their team members' families, right? So it starts at home. It starts with you. It starts with our own people. That includes physical health improvement, mental health improvement. They're actually, this is activated already. They are working towards a target where every employee is a mental health first aider. So they want to mobilise a force of people in communities where if somebody comes into a pharmacy and is struggling with mental health, you know, they don't have someone there who is a bit unsure what to do. They're actually trained as a mental health provider to help them take those first steps to then seek help. Okay, so that's one example. Then we start looking at how they provide access to good health and well-being to all Australians, and they have a whole range of things that they're looking at, but I'll highlight one. When you walk into a pharmacy and you want to see a pharmacist, what's one of the biggest frustrations?
Well, you can't find them because you just got like miles and miles of shelving. And they're hidden at the back behind a barricade.
Yeah, exactly right. So that access is relevant to their core retail offering, but it's also relevant to their opening and closing hours. So, you know, one of the things that they're looking at doing is 24-hour pharmacist access and also multilingual access. So some of these things are like, how are we going to do this?
Yeah.
Right? But they're like high-level goals, long-term goals, which are true to their purpose, and they have started looking at pathways to it. And they're not going to do it all alone. Part of this is about collaboration and partnership. Part of this is about leadership of pharmacy in Australia and leadership of pharmacy around the world. And so they're thinking in that really big, bold, ambitious way of, if we're serious about our purpose, how we can't do it alone, but we can be a facilitator, we can be a collaborator, we can inspire a movement of change. We've got to bring others on the journey.
So that answers my next question, right? Because it's like all this costs money. So how does a little organization actually stump up and make this happen? And so if I'm hearing you correctly, then it's like, oh, we can't do it on our own. We're going to collaborate and we're going to recruit others in this mission. Is that how they make it affordable, or they can afford to do it?
Yeah, well, first of all, they look at it as a long-term thing. So, you know, they've got their 2030 goals, they've got their 2025 goals, they've got their 2023 goals. So they're doing it in bite-sized chunks. So what are we going to, you know, bite off first? Then, you know, what partnerships can we look at? So they might partner with universities, for example. A university, you know, one of the things we've talked about is a community health barometer where we can actually identify what are the health issues in different geographical areas. You know, remote Australia is going to be very different to metro cities and so forth. So partnership is a key one. Not just partnership with government and universities and other businesses, but collaborating with their customers as well to create change. So it's about building a movement for change. And I know some people go, oh, if I hear another movement, but this is essentially what it is. If we are going to solve some of the big societal challenges of our times, we need to look at doing things differently. And to do things differently, you've got to build movements of change. So, you know, you start with bite-sized things that you can do. You make sure that you are linking it up with commercial success within the business. And by that, I mean, you don't do the old way of we do good stuff, but we don't talk about it because that's meh. You know, it's like, well, talk about it, but don't talk about it as if you're the hero of the piece. Talk about it as if you are, look, this is what we're trying to change. Come and help us. Be a part of this movement. And that attracts people who love what you do and what you stand for and want to be a part of it. And people do. I go back to what I said when, you know, the energy shifted in the room when I was presenting to those marketers. People want to do so much more. They just don't know how. So businesses, through their brands, have an opportunity to actually do that and attract people who end up loving that business and that brand. And, you know, they start talking about the business and telling their family and friends about the business and sharing stories about the business. and this is how you build more profitable businesses. And when you build more profitable businesses, you can scale the impact you want. So going back to what you said, Zoe, profit is not a dirty word. It is essential to businesses that are serious about creating meaningful impact, having a higher purpose.
I can see how it works, for something like Zero Co, the no single-use plastics business. People are excited by that because it's like, I don't want to be throwing stuff into the bin every day when I could be avoiding it. And here's a company that's working on a solution. I will shop with them and I will talk about them. And I will spend my money with them because they are doing the result I want to see in the world. So I can see how that attracts people. That's a very specific example of how purpose and business structure are very enmeshed. The whole idea, I like your example from the Bloom's Chemist, though, which is we want to provide healthcare, sure, and we have a profit model, sure. And then we've expanded that so that everybody everywhere has access to healthcare.
They do go further, though, because the other pillar is community, and that's where they're looking at reducing health inequality and injustice. And if you think about access to health and well-being, reducing health inequality and injustice, that's where your social purpose starts to get really meaningful.
And really complex as well. Really complex. So it's not just being, having people have access to a pharmacist. It's actually changing whole structure and social dynamics.
And that's where partners come in. Their expertise is not in supporting communities, vulnerable communities, but other organisations do have those expertise. So it's no surprise that some of the non-profit partners that they already support actually already fit into this.
Yeah. So I'm thinking about the listener to the show right now, and they're getting inspired. Like, I want to find these types of organizations that have these big public purposes. What can leaders in their own businesses do to start to lift the rock and have a look at their purpose? What's the practical things that the listeners can do right now to advance this whole idea of businesses that are for both love and money?
The first step is really to start thinking about what is something that matters to me. So a small business, a founder, what matters to me? Because usually what matters to them has some link to why they've started their business in that industry. I often find when I work with small businesses that we actually go backwards to why they started their business in the first place, and it's a complete surprise to them. It's kind of like, oh yeah, but that was it, but they've forgotten it along the way. And when you articulate it really clearly, it's suddenly, the possibilities suddenly open up beyond what they originally thought it meant. So it's important to start thinking about, what matters to you, because like I said, it always starts with narrative. What is important to you, and what is the shared narrative that you have with the best of the people you work with, whether it's your employees or your clients, because you'll usually find a common denominator of what's important. And then you start thinking about your purpose in the world. Now, you might not be able to articulate it clearly initially, but one thing, if you've got a rough idea of what it is, one process I run through with leaders of all size organizations when they have got some sort of idea of what their purpose is what are you already doing in service of this? And without fail, they already are doing things. Okay, so that question, what are we already doing in service of our purpose, or what I think our purpose might be? And then you start thinking beyond that. What are some other easy things that we could do in service of this?
What do you mean by easy?
Well, for them, what does easy mean? So if you have a list, and you whiteboard this or put Post-it notes on walls, and you're like, what are we already doing? And if let's say you bring some people in to help you with this process. It might be your employees, it might be some clients, it might be investors or whatever it is. What are we already doing in service of this purpose? what are some other easy things that we can do in service of this purpose? It's just asking the question, getting them to bring ideas of what they can do, and you then start leveling, building it up. What are some not so easy things we can do? What are some extraordinary things we can do, right? And through that process, I usually like to have the purpose statement clear before we do that process. But if you haven't got that luxury, start at the low end with what you think your purpose is or what you think your purpose might be, and play.
That's great.
But yeah, I would bring in, don't do this alone. You need people like you. I talk a lot about people like us, which is a Seth Godin term. He uses it frequently. And people like us is about shared narrative. It is about the people who you really connect with. Similar things matter to them that matter to you. And if you can bring them with you, that is an exercise that you can do that will start getting you to understand. And it's so important to do this, because what we are seeing, and there is no shadow of doubt about this anymore, is that the most purposeful companies, the most purposeful businesses, financially outperform their counterparts.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the payoffs down the end. Not only do you make a difference in the cause that is meaningful to you in terms of what matters, and then it's like, oh, all of a sudden your bank account looks better. It's like, oh, and that's better for me, better for my family, better for, again, the cause that I want to continue to support. So what I love about your approach, Carolyn, is that this is not just about, oh, we're starting to make profit now, we can now just put some coins in other people's purses. It becomes integrated into what we're doing, which I think is just marvelous.
And it drives innovation. It cannot fail to drive innovation.
Because you're asking those questions, what else can we do? What else might we do? What else? And all of a sudden, it's less about, I need to make more money so I can give it to other charities. It's more about, what are the actual things that we can do to make a difference here? One of the things I loved about your book is all the great case studies in there, because they're so also inspiring. Where can people find out more about you and your ongoing work, and to get more inspiration for their own for-purpose, business-related journey?
Oh, thank you. Well, first of all, they can connect with me. I'm very active on LinkedIn. So if anyone is on LinkedIn, they can connect with me there, and I share a lot of content through there. Our website, thecauseeffect.com.au, has a whole stack of resources. We have a social purpose scorecard, which is free, takes 4 minutes, and is a really good starting point to get a feel for what is involved in becoming truly purpose-led and understanding where you currently are. One thing I would say is, don't get disheartened, because nobody is going to, get a perfect score straight away. This is a journey that will take place over years and will hopefully be incredibly fulfilling when you do undertake that journey. But we've got resources. We've got a page called #DGS. So, the old sort of entrepreneurial get shit done. Hope I'm allowed to say that. We've turned it on its head to do good shit. So when COVID hit and we saw businesses and brands who were literally like, what can we do to help? We started sharing examples of them, and we ended up putting it in Airtable, this visual database, and we just add to it every week. And you can find all sorts of examples of businesses and brands that are doing good through their business. So that's also free and just good for inspiration.
Thank you. That's really, really exciting. I've really enjoyed this conversation. It's given me a little boost as I recover from COVID here, and it got me rethinking about the purpose of my business and how I want to make a difference and how I can bring those stories to life as well. And I'm sure that people listening to the show will get that little boost as well, and thinking about, what can I do? What businesses can I support, and how can I reinvent my own business to make that ripple effect come to life? So thank you again so much. It's been fantastic.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate you having me on your show, Zoe.
Well, if you needed a boost of excitement about the world and what people are doing in it, then Carolyn's interview and Carolyn's book and her case studies are just that. I got all buzzy after that interview and feel very excited about what I'm doing in business. And I'll be sharing more of that as we go along during the podcast, sharing what we're doing in terms of what we're contributing to the world. A couple of takeaways for me. One is the quote, "Purpose is a journey where you keep leveling up." I think that's fantastic. Thank you, Carolyn, for that. And the other one is a practical one. Where do you get started? And you start by asking the question, what matters to me? What matters to us? What are we already doing? What might we do? What are some simple things we could do? And what are some really big picture, dreamy things we could do? And then you look at the pillars and how to go about embedding that. Very practical, very useful. Loved it. If you want more practical inspiration, consider joining us in Amplifiers. We've got the Amplifiers Academy, which is a self-directed online self-study program. And we've got our Amplifiers Live, where you can start to learn the advanced leadership skills of leading change, leading culture, leading performance, and leading strategy. If you're ready to level up and you want to be around people who are very cool and very inspiring in their own right, including moi, yes, that's me, then Amplifiers might be for you. Check us out, zoerouth.com, or email me, zoe@zoerouth.com. Would love to hear from you. Would love to see you level up and embrace your leadership potential. In the meantime, live well, lead well.
You've been listening to the Zoe Routh Leadership Podcast. To find out more about leadership of the future or to contact Zoe, go to zoerouth.com.